Good evening. Am I live? I hope so. I was punctual at 7 and I started. Facebook collapsed on me. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Liam. I'm presenting live, unplugged, as yet unpublished poetry which I've written over the course of the last 14 days, with an exception, a poem that I'm going to begin with. These live presentations happen bi-weekly, and I am changing the format from a Saturday to a Sunday evening. Yesterday evening, for those of you who might also be follow me on or have my Facebook profile, you would have seen that it was a joyous occasion. Good evening, Michael. Lovely. Yeah. Yesterday was a joyous occasion. It was actually putting my little sailing boat back in the water after 1.5 years last year. Never happened because of the whole COVID equation. And yeah, here in our little spot on this part of the planet, the town is called Eckernförde. It's right in the very north of Germany, on the Baltic Sea, a little fishing port, and just 50, 60 kilometers north of us is Denmark, with its archipelago of islands and sailing waters, which are absolutely stunningly beautiful. And perhaps in the coming season, I will be able to share some more images from that part of the world. Anyway, this evening is about sharing poetry, reading poetry with you, and it's always for me a great pleasure and to have created this opportunity, which is now over a year that I've been in a regular basis, been able to pitch up on Facebook and share not only the poems themselves, but every now and again, a couple of insights, ideas, thoughts, reflections, imaginations. These are all things which I love to write about, and I love especially to share and to talk about. This evening, a strong theme which I'd like to share is the idea of gratitude. The idea of gratitude. What is gratitude? And before I dig into that idea of gratitude, I'm going to read a poem that I wrote 2.5 years ago, and it was a poem which came out of a diagnosis that I had, that again, a rare sort of cancer had reappeared in my system. This is 2.5 years ago. And for those of you in the know, it's called non-Hodgkin. It's lymphatic. It's a lymphatic cancer. And here we are. I'm 2.5 years later. I'm still here. I'm still going. So anyway, but at that moment, when I just got news of what was happening, I wrote this poem, and that's where I'm going to start. And the poem is called The Imminent. And I'll let the poem, first of all, speak for itself. The Imminent. In the frailty of this uncertain moment, between the draw of a breath, the uncertain thud of my heart, me in waves, I wonder why. Why should it be I who caught the chill, the dark death-filled thrill of disease. Its inevitability, my frailty. This uncertain, momentary me, between the telephone calls, between the doctor's stalled look, between the jagged stabs of self-inflicted pity. I wonder where my soul will go when my body turns the key, turns away from life to die, to let me go, to let me fly, to let infinity fill the view, to touch the identity I once knew, loved, shared, laughed, and grew, from a lad, from the family that made so glad, happy too. Those days abundant, care-filled, free, returns the chill to the now of me. Imminent, this immortality. So there, captured in words, is an extremely deep and moving feeling of one's own vulnerability, and how the moment of immortality suddenly presents itself right up close in one's own vulnerability in the life in which we live. So 2.5 years later, here I am. I'm still writing poetry in spite of the vulnerability, but one of the predominant feelings which have liberated me from that stabbing insight of self-pity is one of gratitude. So what is gratitude? When we look at the idea of what gratitude is, it's also known as an elevated emotion. Now, an elevated emotion is an emotion which is something which comes directly from the heart. And an emotion which emerges, an elevated emotion which emerges from the heart, is one which is centered in unity. Now, the idea of elevated, centered, a unified feeling of gratitude is one which we all know. It's one where we receive and we are touched, we are moved, and from that centered feeling of thank you, wonderful, beautiful, you thought of me. Yeah, we are elevated. When we take the idea of what the opposite of an elevated feeling, those are feelings of fear, self-pity, unhappiness. Those are feelings of being caught and captured and insecure. These are feelings which are caught in the dichotomy of positive and negative. Those are feelings which are captured in the world of Newtonian, of giving and taking, of waiting to receive. Those feelings of fear, are ones in which we are waiting for something to happen to us, and we are no longer masters of your own destiny. But gratitude is a feeling which, as I said, it's an elevated feeling which comes from the heart. And coming from the heart, this polarity is no longer there. It's something which simply, with which you create what it is which has come towards you in that particular moment. And when you fill your life and your days with gratitude, You are in a way fulfilling your own humanity, one of our fundamental needs of being happy, of feeling fulfilled, of living a life which is meaningful and deep, significant. Our contact with the world and the joy and the life that we have. So I'd like to take that idea of gratitude, an elevated feeling, and from that embark on my second poem this evening, this is a poem which was written last week, and again it was a moment of inspiration after reading a short quote by this 13th century poet, sage, author called Rumi. You've heard me mention Rumi once before, and if I have a spiritual mentor, then it definitely is this fellow Rumi. And he writes, well, I read this, he writes, "Let the soul speak with the silent articulation of a face. Let the soul speak with the silent articulation of a face." And when I read that, it stopped me in my tracks, you know. It stopped me in my tracks, and it really made me, what on earth, what resonates with me when, you know, what is it? And something strong was definitely resonating with me, and it stayed with me, and I sat down, and this is what happened. The articulation of a face. So listen up, as I say, with your deep, focused listening. And if you like, please make a comment and share if something touches you in some particular way. Upon the edge of a breaking dawn, I reach out to the waiting morn. Why am I? Who am I? What am I? The silent articulation, God's quiet space echoes, reverberates in lines across my aging face. Each smile captured, each laughing moment brings to life, obliterates the pain, the strife, ripples across an endless sea. These questions, lines of poetry, remind my soul, remember thee, the beginning, the end, the now. Be free. The beginning, the end, the now. Be free. So the silent articulation of a face reverberates in lines across my aging face. Each smile captured, each laughing moment brings to life, obliterates the pain, the strife, ripples across an endless sea. These questions, lines of poetry. So the ideas that Rumi loosened in my own imagination were, why am I? Who am I? Where am I? These very deep existential questions, which of course we all have, but they're difficult to articulate, and they're difficult in a way to capture in words and find their way back into the lives that we live in a meaningful and understanding way. But the lines which are captured in our own faces, this is a mirror image of how the soul articulates in its silent voice through the very image of who we are. So live a life which is filled with joy, which is filled with an elevated emotion, and let your soul etch those beautiful lines of happiness and joy across your face. The next poem is called Butterflies. And the metaphor of a butterfly, yeah, this is quite a spontaneous idea. Have you ever had that feeling of butterflies in your tummy? Is that an elevated emotion of excitement? That something is going to happen, that something is being moved deep inside of yourself? Here we go. We'll talk about it afterwards. Butterflies. When she looks at you, listen up, for those deep eyes speak sweet words of silent selflessness, each a butterfly, alone though the colors, the movements take my gaze to intoxication. Not my thoughts, my emotional wings take flight. Feelings lifting me peacefully on the intention of the moment. Eyes, gaze, the look, mesmerize. So the idea here was when someone looks at you and the look in itself goes right in and you feel it in the pit of your tummy as a butterfly, alighting and spreading its wings. Alone, though the colors, the movements take my gaze to intoxication, not my thoughts, my emotional wings take flight. Feelings lifting me peacefully on the intention of the moment. Eyes, the gaze, the look, mesmerize. Yeah, a little poem about that feeling when you meet someone, you talk with someone, and you're moved in a very deep, mysterious, emotional, beautiful way. It's a sense of synchronicity and communication which happens without words. It's a communication on an elevated feeling. So when we talk about elevated feelings, gratitude being one, this is something which goes directly into the heart. It's something you feel it from the heart and that resonates through the rest of your body. Yeah? It's a feeling of unity. It comes from a feeling of radiating. What I want to share with you, in the course of the week, I also posted these quotes. One was taken last week down at the yacht club, where in the evening I was sitting there just having a glass of wine, and there was this, we all know this quote: is the glass, how do you see life? Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Okay, and the idea behind that quote is, do you look at life in a more positive sense or in a more negative sense? Yeah, full or empty when the glass is only half full anyway. So I started thinking about that, and the idea occurred to me that half full or half empty is not the illusion. It's not the question. It's in fact the glass itself. Yeah? So the quote, half empty or half full, is not the illusion. it's the glass. The idea behind this quote is that life is so much more vast, that we can't even capture the idea of life using the metaphor of a glass. Yeah? It's the whole space, it's the whole immersion of life itself, which is ours to experience. So why limit it to even the idea of the glass being half full or half empty? Just embrace the whole thing and take it all, including the sunset. Following through on that one idea, there was another quote which I'd written also, I don't know, a while back now. And this is the light at the end of the tunnel. So we've always, we know this quote as well. It's also in, we've learnt it all our, we've spoken it all our lives. And in difficult situations, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, So if you're going through a difficult patch in life, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Don't worry, mate, you're going to make it. There's always a light down there. You'll get there at some point or another. No. When I thought about this one, this is like, this is like coming from those, not those elevated feelings, but coming from the feelings of cause and effect. The feelings which are generated through Newtonian physics, which are taught to us, which are from childhood right the way into adulthood and remain with us in these expressions of there's a light at the end of the tunnel. No. I think the truth is the light at the end of the tunnel is not the illusion. The tunnel is the illusion. There is no tunnel. Life is light. It is light. Light is an elevated emotion of experiencing it with a feeling of gratitude, with feelings of joy and love, elevated feelings of creating the life which will fulfill you as a human being with joy, with happiness, with creativity. The third quote, because when I've stumbled on the second one, then immediately the third one jumped in, which I know, which we all know. Every cloud has a silver lining. I'm sure we've all heard that one before. Every cloud has a silver lining, meaning, if your life is troubled, if you're in a shadowy patch, if something bad has happened to you, there will always be a silver lining. There's always a good message. But my fundamental premise is that every cloud has a silver lining is not the illusion. The illusion is that there's a cloud there. Fundamentally, life is this light-filled experience. We just need to create it. And with the mind being as the powerful organ that we have to create whatever it is that we want, there needn't be clouds, and we needn't look for a silver lining. We needn't look for the light at the end of the tunnel. For the tunnel is the illusion, and it's the light which is ours. Live in the light with elevated emotions, and those being none other than to be grateful, to be happy, to love and to care, to share, to support. The next poem, I don't really know where this one came from, but it's called 1 to 8, and it's simply, I suppose it's just a little bit of a fun poem, really. That's where I wrote it down. 1 to 8, and it goes like this. The one divine permeates the pattern. Man and woman create the third which crawling cries. 4 corners build the framework of the dwelling. These 5 senses connect you with a driving mind. The 6 directions bind you with a life to strive for. Be as clear today as you are in all 7 of the week. And be to heaven as you appear with God in 8. As you appear with God in 8. So that was, funnily enough, be to heaven as you appear with God in 8, the number 8. That's how I wrote it initially. And then while actually reading the poem, I suddenly realized that innate, the word innate, yeah, was there anyway. So I took away the number and I replaced it with God in 8, and it fitted beautifully. So to just quickly go through these symbols, 1 to 8, the 1 divine, of course, permeates the pattern. Man and woman, those are the 2. Create the 3rd being the child, which crawling cries. That's the 3 is the child, the family. The 4, the corners, the framework of the dwelling in which we live. The 4 corners, the 4 directions of the world. The space in which we move within the course of our lives. The 5 senses connect the driving mind. So all of our senses are inputs, feeding inputs for our mind, which then orders, regulates our lives and the way we live our lives within the world, within the 4 corners of the dwelling being the world, not only the one in which we put our head down to sleep each evening. The 6 directions bind you with a life to strive for. So these are all the different directions, up and down, forwards and back, all the different directions, in and out. They connect us with a life to strive for. So 6, already we're starting to move into innate, into the deep, the depths of innate matter. 7, be as clear today as you are in 7, the 7 days of the week. So that's in the surge of time. 7 connects us with a cosmic idea of a week, a year, in the flow of time. And 8, be to heaven as you appear to God, with God in 8. So be to heaven as you appear with God in 8. Be to heaven as you appear to God in 8. That idea, be to heaven, be to yourself. Be to yourself as you are in heaven. In a way, rise to your own higher being, your own higher awareness with God in 8. Here, the next little poem, which was written during the course of the last 14 days. A small diversion, great news. Yeah, the 3rd book of poetry is already in India. The poems for the book have all been, they're all with the publisher, and the book is actually being put together. The editors are working on it. The different chapters, it's going to be 260, 270 pages. Yeah, it's very exciting. The new cover is there, the new cover of the book, and that will be the magnus opus, the 3rd volume of New Millennium Poetry. So I'm looking forward to actually keeping you updated on what's happening on that front, and we'll be looking at probably another month or 2 before the book will become available again on Amazon. So the next poem this evening is called The Phoenix. Now, we all know what the phoenix is, rising up, the idea of this phoenix rising from the ashes of what has been. So, as always, I'm just going to read the poem and then look at it afterwards, maybe pick out a line or two. Phoenix. What should I do but participate in love? The troubles, the turmoil and pain gain naught, for this flame melts. It's from those ashes, dusty and grey, that the phoenix of love rises. Born from shame, we emerge anew, glowing in the refractive glance of God's own giving. Touch feels free of what it was. Intimate, integral, emancipated in the adventure of now, me is immortal. It's about the ecstatic emulsion of heaven and now, whipped up in waves of intensity, turning towards the source, happy just because it's you, found, free, alive, in me. It's turning, The idea of the poem is the following, that what should I do but participate in love, irrespective. We have so much pain attached to opening our hearts up and diving in the full depth of loving, experiencing life as a reflection of your loving, your ability, your elevated emotion. Throw yourself into that. This is what the poem talks about. Throw yourself into that process. And that process, the fire, gain naught, for this flame melts, and it's from those ashes. That energy is so powerful that if you have had pain before, this will be reduced to nothing, to grey ash. Dusty and grey, that the phoenix of love rises. Born from shame, we emerge anew, glowing in the refractive glance of God's own giving. So there, those lines in a way reflect that by throwing yourself into your elevated emotion of love, what's been will be swept away. That dust will be carried away. And it's God's own giving will rise up within ourselves as the elevated emotion of joy, glowing in the refractive glance of God's own giving. This is what you will get as a feeling of gratitude after having gone and taken that step, irrespective of what you've suffered beforehand and been let down, all the lower emotions of fear and pain and disappointment. And those are feelings of giving and taking. Those are not elevated emotions. So lift yourself to an elevated emotion and throw yourself in. Because what will come of it is intimate, integral, emancipated in the adventure of now. Me is immaterial. It's never really about your limited me. It's about the ecstatic emulsion of heaven and now. So the idea here is that the feelings of pain are always one which we relate to our own character, our own limited selves, where actually the real love and experience is this emulsion, this mixture of yourself and heaven, yeah, whipped up in waves of intensity, turning towards the source, the light, happy just because it's you, found free, alive in me. So the you found free, alive in me is me discovering my higher awareness, my higher self in the emulsion of heaven. Yeah? Poems of elevated emotional experience. That's the endeavor that I have been working with here. This next poem, those were basically the 6 poems, the 6 new pieces of work which I have crafted, written, and been thinking about in the course of the last 2 weeks. But because I always love to, in a way, just dig back into the past and pull up a poem which I've written at some particular point and just share it with you, just to remind you that, there is stuff which is already in one of the books, either this one here, which is available on Amazon, or this the first volume of New Millennium Poetry. This is a poem called Where Light Breaks. And when I read it, I just loved it. Sometimes I read these poems which I've written and I think, it's like, where does this stuff come from? I'm amazed myself, it's, and I'm not saying that out of a sense of wanting, I'm amazed. I'm thrilled that it's possible, And so as a last poem for this evening, I'm sharing this with you. And it's called Where Light Breaks. So listen up, listen deep, and so much talk, so many lines, scribbled, written, scrawled, about the manifest, about the mystery. This is the oneness. We are in the beginning. We are going to in the end. We are in the beginning of where we are going to in the end. Think about that one. Each with everything in between. Dripping between the fingers of my clenched glove, licking blood from the wound of my love. Those days, months, slaves to the movement of the moon. Set me free, let me be, where light breaks me apart, scattering thoughts of tomorrow, creating moments of inspiration, happiness, and poetry for today. Yeah. So that's, when I read that, I loved it. It's just, yeah. In a way, it's a follow through of what it is that I've been talking about this evening. And I'll repeat it. So I'll repeat it slowly. So much talk, so many lines, scribbled, written, scrawled, about the manifest, about the mystery. This is the oneness. Yeah. So the lines, the thoughts, the poetry is coming from the oneness, which is coming from an elevated emotion. An elevated emotion, which is coming from one central source of experience. It is coming from the heart. Yeah? We are in the beginning. We are going to in the end. We are in the beginning. We are going to in the end. Each with everything in between. So that's, I think, that captures the idea of oneness, We are in the beginning. We are going to in the end, and everything in between. That's our lives. And then the metaphor goes to this idea of the dripping between the fingers of my clenched glove. This clenched glove is, in a way, a metaphor for my life, licking blood from the wound of my love. Those days, months, slaves to the movement of the moon, set me free. Let me be, where light breaks me apart, scattering thoughts of tomorrow, creating moments of inspiration, happiness, and poetry for today. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. The metaphor, again, licking the blood of love. Throw yourself into that elevated emotion. And the phoenix of God's giving will will dissipate what's been and elevate the emulsion of you and heaven. And with that, my dear friends, wherever you might be, thank you so much for your time, for listening, and for watching. If you want to make some comments, I'd love to hear your comments. I hope my mother made it this evening. She's always a happy follower. Take care, namaste, and God bless. Thank you, Simona. Next 2 weeks' time, 14 days, we'll see on a Sunday evening. And all the best. Thank you. Good night.